Welcome back to Prudence Coaching English class. Hello students, here we are with ICSE, CBSE and WBSE solution. Today we are going to discuss the major points about the chapter Chief Seattle speech by Chief Seattle. Here we will give you line by line explanation in the second part. Today we will discuss about the background of the poem, about Chief Seattle, and all the major characters and a complete character analysis. This is our part 1 video. Students, these are the major points of this story. Before knowing these major key elements of this story, your knowledge about this particular chapter will not be completed. So let's discuss these major key features of this chapter that will help you a lot in writing question answers very skillfully. So let's start today's content. Chief Seattle speech by Chief Seattle. First of all, we are going to discuss about the background of the story. This will give you a idea about the story's previous aspirations and the story's previous structure, which led Chief Seattle to deliver his speech. All of you are quite eager to know why did Chief Seattle deliver this authentic speech, and this speech was delivered before a century ago almost, and now it has a deep importance, it has a definite importance on the modern society as well. The speech was very moving and it overwhelmed all the audience, all the tribal people in that time. Chief Seattle was the Squamish and the Duwamish tribal leader. So today we'll know about the background, which will let you gather a brief idea about the chapter. Chief Seattle, the leader of Washington Territory in the 19th century, had delivered a moving speech in 1854 in response to the Governor Isaac Stevens's proposal to the Red Indians, or the natives in this story, to surrender their lands to the white settlers. The given lesson is a translated version 1 of the speech in English, which appeared in the Seattle Sunday Star on 29th October 1887 in a column by Dr. Henry A. Smith. That means this original speech of Chief Seattle was translated into English by the writer Henry A. Smith on 29th October 1887. It was published in Sunday Star magazine, and this is the version 1 of this translated speech. Renowned as a brave warrior and an effective orator, Seattle commanded great respect within his tribe. A series of treaties were signed between various Native American tribes. It must be noted that the origins and the authenticity of the speech itself is a highly debated topic. However, despite questions about the authenticity of the text, one may appreciate the ideas it presents and the appeal it makes to acknowledge one another's belief systems and ways of living. So it tells us that, student, this is the translated version of Chief Seattle's speech. So probably there some terms can be missing, some important parts can be skipped by this translator, by this authentic writer Henry Smith. But even after that, even after these controversies, this has a great importance. Now we'll know about Chief Seattle. Student, this is one of the most important topic in this chapter. So prepare this point very well so that you can write all the question answers. And Chief Seattle is the major figure of this story, of this speech even. So you have to prepare this very carefully. Chief Seattle, who lived between 1786 to 1866, remains one of the most famous Native Americans. Interestingly, the city of Seattle is named after him. True to his name, he was a chief of two Native American tribes, that are the Squamish and Duwamish tribes. The first one was from his mother's side and the next one was from his father's side. Chief Seattle had expressed his response to Governor Stevens's proposal to buy the native land, which proves his patriotism in trying to protect and preserve the Native Americans' right to their lands, where they had been born and were living for ages. He always tried to safeguard their rights and their welfare. Consequently, he was willing to accept the proposal of friendship with the whites, but not ready to sell or surrender their native land. He had a spiritual bent of mind too. According to him, there is no death. It's only a change of world. The invisible dead will continue to live forever. Chief Seattle knew that there is not enough power and material resources to defend the whites, to defend the Native Americans from the white colonizers. Rather, he believed in togetherness and favored a harmonious life. So, this is all about the central figure Chief Seattle. Prepare this very well so that you can make a brief idea about this whole chapter and can write your question answer very well. Now we'll know these points as well. Now we'll know about the major character analysis. Students, this point and these elements are going to be very important from the aspect of this chapter. We have discussed each and every character of this story very carefully and very well, so that you can find every content, every bit of this chapter in front of you. So let's discuss this. The major characters in the stories are: number 1, Chief Seattle; number 2, the Great Chief of Washington; number 3, Governor Stevens; number 4, Native Americans; and number 5, the whites. Number 1, Chief Seattle. We have already discussed about Chief Seattle. So for the character sketch or character analysis of Chief Seattle, you will just look at the previous one. Next, number 2, the Great Chief of Washington. The Great Chief of Washington refers to the President of America at that time. Though the President at the time of the speech was Franklin Pierce, Seattle actually referred to the first President, George Washington, as the Native Americans thought that he was still alive. The good father of Washington actually refers to George Washington. Chief Seattle mentions that since King George has moved his boundaries further north, he has become the father of the Native Americans. Now the next point, that is Governor Stevens. Chief Seattle meant the Governor of Washington Territory, Isaac Stevens, as White Chief. He was the newly appointed governor who visited to a council of local tribal chiefs to investigate the lands that was considered to belong to US. He was the first governor of Washington Territory and a representative of the imperialist America to the Red Indians, who proposed Chief Seattle to surrender their sacred native land to the white government instead of a comfortable life forever. Now for the next character, that is Native Americans. Native Americans had to fight back the oppression of the whites. The Red Indians were once seen in large numbers, but now they were like scattering trees of a storm-swept plain. That means they were very few in number. They had to live in constant threat of their enemies, such as Hydras and Tasmanians. Their freedom was restricted and had depend on the kindness of their good father in Washington. They felt as if they were all orphans and were ready to sacrifice their life for their sacred motherland. The natives had to put up the whites who had emerged for the purpose of colonization. Now we'll know about the whites, the fifth character. The whites were powerful and outnumbered the red Indians or the natives. They have been compared to the predators who were indifferent to the feelings towards the lands. They acted like the masters and expected the red Indians' obedience. They were materialistic in mind and believed in Christianity. They abided by strict rules. The whites were oppressive in nature and overpowered the natives. So that's all about this chapter part 1. Students, if you find this video helpful, then don't forget to subscribe, share and like our videos. Have a nice day, students. Goodbye.